G'day, my name's George and I welcome you to the 6th of May edition 2026 of A Message of Hope. Well, just recently a video footage on news.com.au started circulating from Toowoomba. It showed CCTV footage of a council worker on private property appearing to approach and coax a cat. Now, the post suggested that the worker was deliberately luring the cat out into the street just to justify issuing a roaming fine against the owner. It was around $280. Now, the comment sections did not wait, of course. The worker was tried, convicted and sentenced. In the comments, that is. That's before the lunch, before anyone heard the other side of the story. However, here's what is actually confirmed, okay? That the footage is real, The complaints are real, The council launched a formal investigation, according to that. Whether the luring interpretation is accurate, that has not been officially established at all. There were indications the owners already had an ongoing compliance history with the council. Isn't that interesting? And that matters because enforcement often escalates when there is a prior pattern, you see. The full picture, it's still emerging. I haven't heard anything since then. But of course, by the time those details surfaced, the verdict was already written. You can guess. And I have to tell you, I was one of those people who initially sided with the internet with my mind. I was just lazy, I guess. But I didn't put any comments. Why would I? Yeah, I didn't post anything. But I watched the footage, and before I had heard a single word from the other side, which should be the worker, my internal verdict was in. Ding! I was confident, settled. The kind of certainty that doesn't feel like a rush to judgment, because it doesn't feel like a rush at all. It felt like clarity, the decision I had in my mind. Well, the opinion anyway. And that's the thing about a one-sided story, as always. It never feels incomplete. It does feel like you've been handed insight that most people have missed. Now, let me cross the road first. Just got to be careful about this. Almost made it to the other side of the road. Okay, well, I suspect you've had your version of this moment. Wouldn't surprise me. Maybe with someone at work or family incident. Maybe with some sort of story that felt pretty urgent. Maybe it's with financial advice a friend passed on with complete confidence. Maybe, a lot of maybes. And you know, this is the channel about money and faith and stewardship. And I know you might be wondering, hey, what a cat in Toowoomba has to do with either of those subjects? Yeah, good question. I'll get there. Because the same mechanism that settled my verdict before the investigation was complete, well, that instant confidence, single source conclusion is operating in your financial life right now, perhaps, I'm guessing. Probably without you even noticing it. And of course, by the way, if you enjoy these type of videos, I'm going to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, please, and share this video far and wide. Okay, as you guessed it, comes to my favorite part of the message, a passage from the Bible. And here's what Solomon wrote about this. You'll find it in the book of Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 15. This is what he says. The simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps. It's important. I'm going to read it again. The simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps. So it's mentioned about two people, right? Two types of people. Same information arrive in them, completely different response, as you would expect. Because the simple believes everything. Not because they're foolish or uneducated. You can't say that, George, can you? But because they haven't yet built the habit of pausing. Just pausing, just stopping. So the first version of any story is always Almost, yeah, the version that's told by the person who benefits most from believing it. The simple person hasn't yet learned to ask who that is. However, the other side of the coin, the prudent person pauses. So maybe not deliberately being cynical, and not with suspicion of anything, of course, but just they give thoughts to the step before taking it. Have a little bit think about it. Now, I want to be honest about something in that verse, because it's easier to read and think, well, I'm not the simple one, I'm a reasonably intelligent adult. I don't believe in everything, and I hope you don't. Great. But the verse doesn't say the simple person is gullible by character, does it? I think it describes a habit instead, or the absence of one. And you can be a highly intelligent person and still lack the habit of pausing when a convincing story arrives quickly. Yeah. Now, I've told you before, it's worth mentioning. I sat in a year 10 class. I used to be studying in a Catholic school, yep. And the PE teacher was the substitute for that day. I can't remember what class we were meant to have. Maybe nobody more surprised than he to be in the class, I guess. Anyway, at some point, a student asked, if poverty is such a problem, why can't the government just print more money and give it to the people who need it? That's a pretty good question, right? For a person at that young age. Because the question seemed reasonable to me. I didn't think of inflation. What is that? Nobody taught me. I guess no one of us did. Well, the student wasn't foolish and I wasn't foolish. We had half that picture, didn't we? And the half we had seemed to fully answer the question. But the missing half, what happens to the purchasing power of every dollar already in circulation when you flood the system with new money? Ever thought about that? Ever pause and think about it? Because that half changed the conclusion entirely. I'll let the truck go through, as you would. In fact, the more convincing a story is, the more the habit of pausing is needed. Because here is what gives thought to his steps actually looks like in a financial context. Have a think about this. When someone hands you a hot tip, a viral investment claim maybe, in a news story that's producing urgency, I'm pretty sure the prudent person asks 4 things before doing anything at all. You want to know what they are? I think you do. Well, first, will this still be true in 48 hours? Yeah? Genuine opportunity doesn't evaporate overnight. In most cases, I suspect. Pressure that can't survive 48 hours, it's almost never real information, is it? It's always, almost again, you've got to be careful, manufactured in urgency designed to stop you thinking clearly. So, give it a pause, let it breathe. Secondly, who benefits if you believe this? Perhaps every compelling financial story that arrives with momentum have someone behind it who gains from your yes. Find them. Find their motive. That doesn't make the advice wrong. Of course not. It just means you deserve to know who's telling it and why. Third point, have a run past someone with nothing to gain from your decision. Someone intelligent, obviously, someone with skills. Not the friend who introduces you to it, not always, but someone with no commission, so there's no stake in it, no cheerleading interest, who will ask uncomfortable questions because they genuinely don't care either way. But at least maybe they're reasonable, they're factual, and they can see both sides of the story. Lastly, does the person telling you have skin in the game? Now that's very interesting. Did they put their own money where their confident advice is? Because words cost nothing, does it, at times? The person with genuine conviction has usually already acted. Now, none of this requires a financial degree. It requires one thing that Toowoomba comment sections didn't have before the verdict came in, that I didn't have, and that was a pause, yeah? Now, I was in a business class some years back when a classmate mentioned she had been told to buy Iraqi Dinar, is that how you pronounce it? Which is the currency, okay? The reasoning went like this. The Iraqi war would end, so the United States would invest heavily in rebuilding the Iraqi economy. The dinar would appreciate sharply, and anyone positioned early would see significant gains. That's what I've been told. And of course, when you hear that laid out, it's got the shape of logic, isn't it? Sounds pretty good to the ear. Now, I didn't take their advice, even though I had money. But I remember the shape of that story. It was the confident framing. It was the tidy sequence of cause and effect. You know, they imply urgency. Oh, you got to get in early. And the feeling that you were being let in on something most people hadn't yet worked out. Yeah, I'm glad I held on to my money. So what the story didn't include was the other half, you see. Fast forward to now, the Iraqi dinar had massively devalued. The currency mechanics meant the reevaluation scenario described in a pitch before simply didn't work the way it sounded. Now that information was available, yeah, it just wasn't in the version being passed around. And that's always how it works, right? The part that changes everything is the part you haven't heard yet. And I want to be clear about Toowoomba, that story. Now the investigation may confirm everything people suspect, maybe. The worker may have done precisely what the footage appeared to show. Again, maybe. I don't know. Maybe no one does until the council concludes the inquiry. It'll be interesting to see. And that's exactly the point, really. My friends, what are you currently running on half a story? Yeah, what final decision are you sitting close to right now? Is it a tip you received? Or maybe some news, a market fear that you absorbed? Perhaps even an opportunity that feels urgent. And this is where you haven't found yet the other half. It might be right, the advice, but you haven't heard and you haven't checked, and you owe yourself to do the due diligence checking. Remember what I said. The prudent gives thought to the step before taking it. Not because they're fearful or being cynical, no. Because they've understood something the simple person is still learning, I hope. Now, I still don't know what my classmate decided on the diner. We rarely talk. I'm not even sure she knew what the questions to ask before she decided. Anyway, each to their own. So, again, the prudent gives thought to his steps. I hope you hear that differently now. Not just as a principle, but also as a picture of a specific person. A person who pauses when the verse version arrives, who finds out who benefits, who asks for the other half before the verdict is written. Yes, the council in Toowoomba is still investigating. How about you on the things in life that are important? All right then, turned out to be a nice, glorious day. Fantastic. I'm happy. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.